most of the people who are coming are here, so we'll get started. Is everybody comfortable? Okay, good. All right, well, I just want to welcome everybody here. My name is Pat Sides, and I'm the archivist. And just wanted to welcome everybody to the Willard Library. I know some of you are familiar faces. If you haven't been here before, I especially want to welcome you. There's been a lot of history happening here since we opened in 1885, and it's still happening, and history is a popular subject here, and this is a great place to present it. Evansville is very fortunate to have a number of people who are very passionate about Evansville's history, and they like to share their research with us, and we're lucky. And tonight, you're going to hear an excellent program. Many of you probably know the speaker, Harold Morgan, who has presented here on a number of occasions. He is a well-published author and researcher, and without wasting any more time, I'll let him get started.
Thank you. Good evening. You're all welcome to be here. You're a good-looking crowd. And if you can't hear me, you let me know. If you have a question as we go through, I want to know it. Don't wait till after the end of the show. Just shout it out. Make sure you shout it out so I can hear you. You're free to ask your questions after the show as well. But if you see someone on here in a picture, you know, shout that out. These are old pictures that I'm going to show you. They're very historic. If you see somebody or something you were acquainted with, P47, whatever, let me know. There's several of these back on the table, and this is kind of the theme of what I'm talking about. I'll show you a different version. This is a 1928 airport. And they were serious. This was real business. This was the way they thought airports should look. So I'll show you a couple more options for this. And I want to tell you that everything I'm going to show you and tell you came from Willard Library and the Evansville Courier. I think that's almost 100% true. There may be a couple of the things in here that Willard didn't have pictures of, or USI, but it's all picture history and it's newspaper history. I'm a newspaper historian. I just took my last book to the MT Publishing on Monday, and it's all newspaper, everything in there. A lot of people say you can't get your history out of newspaper. Baloney. That's where it is. You're going to see things here. The only thing you will find those is reading the Evansville Courier. I'll go back and read the Evansville Press or the Evansville Journal. So, I'm going to begin with 1855. This was everything I'm going to tell you now is cutting edge. I don't want you to think old timers. I don't want you to think primitive. I want you, every picture you look at, I want you to think that's cutting edge. These men were giants. They were like our astronauts. They were like, say, a space shuttle today. This is the way they viewed this. And this came to Evansville in 1855, and the balloon went up. The clouds were kind of low that day. And they had this great show before, by the way, with young dancing ladies. They gave out 25 cents to see it. They had music, they had bands. When the man lifted up, the clouds were low and he went up in the clouds. And that was kind of a disappointment. And they shouted back and forth as long as they could. A man in the balloon to the leader on the ground. He disappeared. He came down at Rockport. How does that work? Because roads in these years led to the river. They were north and south in our case. The Buffalo Trails were east and west. So how did this man get this balloon on a wagon? How did the wagon get to where he was? Telegraph had just come in. Telegraph had been here for about 7 or 8 years. So perhaps he went to Rockport, got the telegraph, and he sent it to Evansville, and the wagon went out that way. The better part of this story happened the following year when he returned in 1856, and he took the newspaper editor up in the balloon with him. It was a safe trip, so that was the second year, and that's how he went. This man flew in Evansville, and he may have been the first flyer. He may have been number one. The Wright brothers flew with an engine. This man used pedal power. But his name was Arcadius Texas farmer. He lived over by Astar on Division Street, and he had a building where he built this. And the problem was, I think the problem was his balloon was too small. And this was the Evansville Courier. This was the Journal. And this was the balloon as they were pumping it up. They used hydrogen gas, which was available still back then for gas lights in Evansville. The first airship, it flew May the 28th, 1899, out of the Evansville ballpark, which was Louisiana and Reed Street, maybe. It was like Bossy Field back in those days before Bossy Field was built. And he flew it, his son flew it again. The problem was, look at this picture. This was the third flight, and there was, look how big that balloon is. This is like what you expect today. Now this was the artist's rendering, and this balloon maybe just wasn't large enough because his son finally flew it better at the Christie Fairgrounds. And I never heard of this was in August, and I read and reread and reread the papers, and there's not another word about him. There were several fires over around on the division around where Astar is now. That's where he lived, that's where his shop was. I kind of suspect that a fire burned up his ship, but I don't know. He was scheduled, he was given a contract to go fly the Indiana State Fair, and that was $2,500. That was real money back in those days. But it just never happened. The man disappeared off the face of the earth, but he was a great inventor. He had patents. If you search his name today, there's only one Arcadius. I don't believe there's another one ever lived. If you go and search Arcadius Farmer, you'll find patents after patents after patents. So I don't know what the rest of his life was, but it's just kind of like he left Evansville and disappeared forever. And I wish I could tell you the rest of that story because I really didn't want to find it. This, I don't know how to say that. Cave and shoot? Nobbin, say it again. Nobbin shoot. This man came down from the east, and this was his big balloon, and that looks kind of like what we're familiar with today. So he was the third man that was up to fly. He did that in 1908. This was the very first flight. It was March 30th, 1910. Nobody recognizes that. They say the first flight was 1911. Not true. 1910. Aiken Park. Aiken Park used to be the fairgrounds, and it was 4 blocks north and south. Now it's 2 blocks. And so this is where he flew it, and this is where the earlier flights and shows were taken from, was Aiken Park. It was really the fairgrounds of Evansville. I want to show you several of these aviation meetings. Their terms are quite different from what we come to know today. They call it fancy flying, stunt works, and things like that. So the language of aviation was beginning to develop back in these days. Most exciting and thrilling exhibitor ever given in Evansville. Admission 50 cents. And the old airplane, these guys were cutting edge, they were giants, they were great. What more can I, just like the astronaut, just exactly like Neil Armstrong. This was the air show at the Fairgrounds Stadium. There's 1 airplane, 2 airplanes, you know. The following year I'll show you one where there's 5. This was the grounds that were there at Aiken Park. By the way, did you know that in Aiken Park there are at least 2 elephants and 1 gorilla buried there? I just had to tell you. They died. One of the elephants died, and they executed. This is off the subject, but the elephant had a wounded leg and it was gangrene, and they decided, how do you kill an elephant? They hung it. They tied the elephant to a tree and tied a big rope around his neck and had a team of horses to choke him to death. That's one of the elephants that's very that's not everybody's airplane. This is a great picture. This was Lincoln Beachy, and he was here quite a bit of time, and you'll see the name Curtis. This was the man, the Curtis Aviation, I think, was in California, and he was a big airplane seller back in these years, and he flew over the courthouse, and this was Lincoln Beachy.
Curtis was in Evansville, New York.
Pardon?
Curtis was in Evansville, New York.
Is that right? This is the Robert Glasscock photo, and if any of you know Robert Glasscock, he lives somewhere on the south side of his house. Straight Straight pleasure flights are $15. Check this one out. Stunt flights, $25. But that was the language they were using. What was that, 1919? So we're going forward. This was at Smith Station, and it's right at Green River Road and Boonville Highway. What is it, Tom? Print shop, I think, is on that corner today. That's where this show was given. Smith stopped. It was really the traction line that came in from Boonville. This was history. This was the first airplane to fly the Atlantic, and it came to Evansville. There was 4 of these. You got 3 other. This was called an NC-45, NC-4. It was the U.S. Navy. There was 4 of them took off, and he made 9 stops in 23 days to get across the Atlantic. So you can see it was rather a challenge, and these guys risked their lives. This is Carl. I have a lot of Carl K. Connect stuff. Fancy Carl K. Connect? I have. This is the way they did it. It had 3 engines, and it had 2 pilots. It had the commander was the observer. It had back here a chief mechanic, an ensign, and a radio operator, and then a place for one guy to sleep. So there's 2, 4, 6 men that flew on them, and they would fly, for a little while, something break, or they scheduled their flights to go 50 miles and stop, 50 miles and stop. But this was the first airplane to ever cross the Atlantic.
Harold,
Yes.
you can still see one of these hanging up in the ceiling in the museum.
What is it?
Down in NC-4.
Okay.
In a museum, air museum in Pensacola.
At Pensacola. There's one of those there. That's pretty neat. I wonder if it's this one. Could be. I'm not sure what happened to the 3. They just didn't finish. They were maybe in the ocean.
One of them didn't make it because of the crash.
There aren't
3 of them, 3 out of 4 made it.
This is in Pensacola. If you didn't hear it in the back, this is right now. This or one like it's in our museum in Pensacola, Florida. This now we're up in 1919, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 airplanes in this one. They had another one that followed up on. They said 7 airplanes. This, I wonder how many were Curtis pushers. Do you know where this hill is? Come on, you all try to Harrison High School. Recognize it now? Harrison High School sits right here. Here's Division Street. Oh, you see right beside Harrison High School. Here's This could be on the south side of the Lloyd. Back then it was Slaughter's Avenue. Slaughter's Division from the Lloyd. So these guys are all flying, and that's a Harrison High School site right here. I want to tell you this story. This is Carl K. Connect. Carl K. Connect was probably the first or second passenger to ever fly out of Evansville. Carl K. Connect was a cartoonist that retired 30 years ago, and he's got 10,000, 20,000 images that you've already seen some. I'll show you a couple more. Carl K. Connect was really pushing aviation, and he wanted to get some pictures. And he had a 35-pound camera with 5x7 glass negatives. So he loaded in the airplane. I'm not sure just who. I didn't get into that. But he loaded in the airplane. The fields were wet. He couldn't take off. So what they did, clearly, Carl K. Connect got in there to a courier car, and they drove to Mount Vernon where they had not had so much rain. The airplane flew down there. So when the airplane got there, he loaded up into his camera, and he took 40 shots. Then he had to take his glasses off and everything because he was hanging out over the airplane with this camera. And it made 40 shots. 5 turned out good, and this is one of them. And that's a pretty darn good photo. Even today, the turmoil that Mr. Connect must have been in to make all the shots. I don't know what the date was. I wish I put that on here. But anyhow, Carl K. Connect, he was our hero. And he really promoted aviation. The courier was behind it, not the press or the journals so much, but Connect Club. Here's Garrison Airport. Jerry Garrison in here by chance? No. This is, you were asking who was somebody was talking to me about Harrison Airport. Here it is. I I'll show you a different picture of it in a moment. This was 1919, now at Highway 41 and Morgan Avenue. And I think I met him down here at the show I'd given here. He asked if I wanted to see it, and I said, yeah. He sent it in the mail. So this is it, early airport scene, and that's a pretty bad picture. But hey, that's fantastic. 1919 airport. Yes, if you look on the map, well, here's where it is. This is the building right here that you see, and this is without the. You can't read the sign. This was the Dixie B Highway. Now you notice Highway 41. Highway 41, when they rebuilt Dixie B, came out here. Louisville Road, you know, is Morgan Avenue. So this is Highway 41 at Morgan Avenue, Louisville Road. It's like you've been on 10,000 times. Here's where it was. If you go back in here and look back in the subdivision, you'll see Garrison Avenue and Aviation Avenue. People live like that. And this was Jerry Garrison's relative had that airport. And this was with a man named Faulkner and Fisher. And I'll show you a great picture of Faulkner and home. I think he's kind of guy I'd really like to know. But anyhow, this was the early airport. This is when the airport was built. This was a milestone day. March 11th, 1928. That's when the airport ground, the original airport ground was bought. And that's probably the most important single day in aviation history in Evansville. I'm going to show you something in a moment. Let me back up and tell you, everything I'm showing you is documented as fact. It's in the papers, it's in history books, it's wherever. I'm going to show you something in a minute that I hope will shock you, surprise you, and it's not history. It's amazing. So anyhow, if you look at that page you got, it doesn't look like, see where all of these runways come together? Here's another one. See this? Now you got the one you handed out, and this one, and this one. This is the way they envisioned the airports back in those days. This was what they thought would work best. And I'll show you what the turf was, what the field was like in just a moment. It's grass. It's grass. It's cinders. The cinder story is fantastic. I think you'll like that. So this is the 1928 airport, which is what you have there. A little bit different image of it. They had one runway for every potential direction of the wind. You know, today our big airliners, they just land cross, you know, they crab, and it's a different way of doing it now. But then they thought you had to land into the wind, take off into the wind. This was the first airlines, and this came in September, Interstate Airlines. They test landed. Look at the field. Look what the material is. It's turf. This was what in Europe in World War I, they didn't have airfields. They had turf, you know, pastures, and they just needed a larger landing spot and a place to store the airplanes. So this is what the airport thought they should have in 1928. And there's a big debate over making the cinders or turf. And turf went out for a while. Cinders didn't work very well maybe, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So I think this man right here is a pilot, because here was the actual Evansville Courier paper. It's showing that this was the first passenger flight. It was November 10th, 28. This was when they came in a month or two earlier just to check out the airport. You know, there weren't many airports in those days. The Army flew in one time with 5 planes, and they would just look, and they went out by St. Joseph Avenue. What's the okay. They landed out there and gave an air show. They just flew in and found a level place to land, and they landed and gave an air show. Right there on the golf, where the golf course is now. That's kind of the way things worked in those days. You know, it was free and easy and casual. These guys were crazy. They were good at their game. I think if you look at that picture of that man right there, I think this is, I see his hairline, that's the only thing I can go with. His name was George Meyer. This was the Central Airlines became Brandon the next year, so you know Brandon. Not all of these airlines that you see stayed in operation. So this became granted, and I would ask you pilots, what's in this building? Is this guy going to fly? Because you know, that camera's either looking to the west or to the north. You can't see the tree line, which is about a mile away. I can't believe they're going to fly, but isn't that a lovely airplane? 4 tri-motors came in, and this guy came in as well.
And the Stinson.
Pardon?
That airplane is Stinson.
Stinson.
Stinson driver.
Here's his dashboard. You like that? Kind of different today, huh? But this was, you know, Michael Cook was much better than this, huh? But that's what they had, you know. Radio was sort of a magical thing in those days. Can you imagine what it was like? Everybody thought they would get rich on airmail. And this was a big deal. This was interstate. See it? And there's one, two, three, maybe, I think 4, maybe 5 airplanes. You kind of get complicated up in here. And they're overhauling, repairing, doing work on the airmail airplanes. A story on the airmail, the nation, the people thought they'd get rich off of airmail. It was one of those gold mines people could see. So many pilots, so many airports, so many businesses wanted involved in airmail, and it really wasn't that good. But it was so disorganized and undependable back in the 1929 decade that the U.S. decided the Army will fly all of the airmen. And it was a disaster. These guys were loose, free, easy, and they could fly anywhere and land anywhere. But when the Army pilots took over, there was crash after crash after crash like forgive it, 8 or 10 pilots died in the first month, Army pilots, because they were by the book. And not like what these guys were. You know, they were just in it to make a buck, and you get in wherever you could, whenever you could, and get out when you could. But the Army pilots were not trained to be that way, just like they're not today. Reckon, see anybody here you know? Come on, don't read it. Anybody see anybody you know? Will Rogers. This is a Navy airplane. It's been borrowed. This thing is all written up and everything. But here's a Clockworks. He was the airport chairman. This is Will Rogers, Carl Connect, and this man is Henry Dillon. And they flew it up. This is one of the prettiest airplanes. I wanted to show you a picture of it, but we didn't have time to do it. Love the airplane. Silver. The Navy pilot is not here, and they flew it for a Navy fund, memorial fund. And Carl and Will Rogers flew in. Does he look bashful? I couldn't believe that was Will Rogers, because you know, Will Rogers is Mr. Florida. I don't know if you remember Will. I remember listening as a kid. He was a special man. So anyhow, that's Will Rogers. I love this picture. This is going to tell you so much about the airport. Let me spend a little bit of time with this. This was 1930, and the picture you have is 1928. And here's what they built. Really. See the black? See the black? That's cinder runways. And it was only about 3 inches thick. They got what they could. People saved their cinders and took them to the airport, or they took them to the farm, and the trucks would come and pick up the cinders to build the airport. I'm serious. You know, it was kind of one for all thing. Well, that didn't work. Remember, they wanted turf to begin with. So they ended up making the first runways for cinder. And that didn't work, so they went to 3-inch crushed stone. Then the cinder runways in 1928, they put in this crushed stone in 1930. And that didn't work very well either, because you can't get money, and that stuff is down, pretty soon it's inches below. So that was quite a problem. But let me show you what else is here. Look at, what did you call these little cabins? There was a name for, I remember when I was a kid, there was still some around. These were little roadside motels. But see, there's some down here, there's taverns, no telling what all went along there. But Republic Aviation came in 1942 and just swiped all of that out, all gone. But look right here. This was a crescent field right now. Atlas Van Lines is right here. It's right on this corner. I grew up down here. that I spent all my early young life right down here. I'll show more about that in a minute. But here was the first terminal, here was the first hangar. This was all gone, this Highway 41 making a curve, and this was the Chicago Southern Railroad. I did just want this one marked. But this was where they will build Republic Aviation in 1942. Our first stewardess was Catherine Youngblood. She came in September 1935, and that's Catherine. That was kind of an epic event when I guess when the stewardess first came in. They were flying in their airplanes, people just load on. There's several I could have shown you, but I had to limit it and everything, so I like her. She's one of my heroes. You like this?
Question.
Simpler times, simpler acts. This is the hangar to the airport. They're seated. They're out shooting. There's another picture that has a pistol. Yes.
Did they have to be nurses, registered nurses?
I'm sorry.
Did the stewardesses have to be registered nurses?
Yeah.
Back then? Stewardesses.
Say that.
They had to be nurses, right?
Did you hear that? No, I did not know that. See,
Well, I thought they did. Thanks for coming in.
I understand that stewardesses had to be nurses. I would not be a bit surprised about that. They had different rules that we have today. This is looking out west side of the airport. That's where she's firing, is to the west side. This was the operations room for Columbia Airlines in 1935. See up there, Pat, you have the photos from the Sportsman Club, and I'm wondering if this is what some of those photos. Willard was getting all of these photos, and this is one of Willard's. But Willard has a stack of photos that came from the Sportsman's Club. That was the first. I'm not sure it was the first. There was the Aero Club. There was two Aero Clubs, one on the same day. One was pilots, World War I pilots. The other was air owners. So, but this was a Sportsman's Club, I think, that had these photos. Notice the radio, notice the telephone. High-tech stuff. This is Ray Fortner, the man who bought the Garrison. He and maybe a partner bought the Garrison Airport. And his airplane is just like what Lindy flew. That's what it's called. It's just like what Lindy flew. So you see, it's the same type of airplane, or same model, what never across the Atlantic. So this is Ray Fortner. He was a good photographer. But I don't have space to show his photo. He took from Royal High School, it's brand new. He's got a great picture of that, and he flew over several different things. This was the first Evansville woman pilot, a Willard Light, and I understand that was like drugs.
Charles.
This may be her husband. He had an airplane. I don't know who that would look like, but she was the first female aviator. We're up to the 1937 flood, and I'm going to show you this one quickly. This is the U.S. Army fixed the airport drainage in 1942-43. But see, look at this is about an inch of water, I understand. Well, that's big. How does it drain? You see the problem of drainage? Wait till you see the next picture of the airport. So these guys are standing in like maybe half an inch or 1 inch, but it's consistent all over. No drainage. And that was a real problem. Remember we talked about the wet grounds and then the cinders and the stone would just sink down into the mud. This, oh, by the way, this was January the 31st. The flood crest day they thought was February 1, but the Weather Bureau changed that to February 2. It just went up an insignificant amount, but really crest day was February 2, and that's what this is. Look at it, it froze. All of this water you see here froze, and this is the airport. That's one of the runways. Over here's the terminal. Pigeon Creek is in, this is Little Pigeon Creek in the background, not Big Pigeon Creek. And I grew up right here. Tom Spears not here. My trailer was, that barn, my trailer was right here. Tom Spears now has his machine shop, Tri-State Aero machine shop, and it's Tom's hobby shop. So when Tom took me over there a month or two ago, I kind of got loose, and this is where I was as a kid. We moved in 1942 Dad hired on a Republic, and Mom and Dad bought a trailer that was right here. This was the Heineken. I'll tell you about the Heinekens in just a moment. This was the WPA, and they were wide. See, they're widening 25 feet, 25 feet. They're widening the original runway. Well, Republic will come in a couple more years and widen it even more. They'll make Evansville an airport, but this was all WPA workers. And I didn't show you the picture. There's no hired equipment. WPA all across America worked for broom shovels, ramps, axes. The thing was to stretch the job to make the man and woman have a paycheck, not to get it done quickly. That was the opposite of what you want to do. So, here's one guy driving a truck. The other pictures show wheelbarrows, like 17 wheelbarrows going up to get the concrete mix and dumping in the trucks. That was WPA, and it was very successful. You got to admire that. It was not for economy, it was to make paychecks for as many people as you possibly could. This is the terminal building, and you see up there the brand, the beacon. Eddie Rickenbacker came into Evansville several times. This, I think, was his first trip. Jimmy Doolittle, I didn't tell you, I didn't show his picture. He flew in, he had an emergency, and he had to land at the Evansville Airport. It's kind of a light crash, the landing that he made. But Jimmy Doolittle was here. There's quite a name of the names I recognize, leading early aviators that came in Evansville. So this is a DC-3, the Great Silver Fleet, and one of these men is Eddie Rickenbacker. I'm not sure what's going on. See the storm? I'm guessing the WPA has been working. The terminal is over here. Let's see, there's two hangars. So I'm guessing this is all where the WPA had been working, and it's just kind of left over the topsoil and they had to put it back in place. This is mechanic arts. This is called air markers. And this was for aviators. Remember, they didn't have radios yet in the private planes. So these were 30 feet high letters. The circle is 30 feet, and off that arrow is pointing towards the airport and says 4 miles. So you can see where a pilot could fly over and he could see where the airport was, and he used that. This is the latitude and longitude. I found pictures of the Duke of Tillman High School. It has the same thing, and there was a building, I'm not sure what it was, in Mount Vernon that had air markers on it. World War II interrupted all of that. Radio and World War II, we changed all of our thinking in World War II. So that's what that was all about. I don't know if it's still, I don't know if you can still see it up there or not. I just don't know.
It's still there.
This is something I know happened. And I'm going to tell you something about a theory and what my father used to say. On this day, in 1940, let me back up. Seversky, at this time, was Republic Aviation. But the airplanes were still named Seversky, which was what it was. About a year before this, Mr. Seversky got on a plane, went to France, and the board fired him. They fired him, changed the name of the airport, and he lived on a slight income the rest of his life. But Seversky built these planes and became Republic Aviation, which you know. Okay, let's go from there. They took refuge on the Evansville Airport. There was 19, there was 19 planes. One was a North American 004 observation, 04. It was an observation airplane. They got caught by a storm and they made an emergency landing on the Evansville Airport. My dad told me, I heard him say this morning, and I didn't know what he's talking about. He said that when Republic Aviation came in, it was payback of the Air Force for being good to their pilots. I had no clue what that meant. Look at this. Go south. This was George Army Airfield at Lawrenceville, Illinois. Evansville was given, the Air Force quickly gave this to Evansville. And it was in the Pigeon Creek area. And I take that to be the Green River, because the paper didn't know where exactly it was. It was a military secret. So the airfield was to be somewhere between Green River Road and perhaps I-69 now. It was north of the Lloyd or Slaughter Avenue. But when the Air Force flew in, it was flooded. They looked at Mount Vernon and canceled that. They built it at Lawrenceville, Illinois. Very quick, they built this. This is Lawrenceville. Isn't that great? Those are 1 mile long runways. They had 300, these black dots, I counted them, there's 165 of each. They have 300 pilots, and here's about 75 up here on graduation day flying over. I don't know if all 150 of them were flying or not. But they were AT-10 Wedge-Stalls, which is a plywood airplane. They were cheap, they were light, they were good to train pilots in. So Evansville missed this. But I remember this was given to Evansville before the flood. The interesting thing about this, in 1943, there's Emross River is up here. This is its creek. And all of this was flooded out in March of 1943. They lost their hospitals. They had to rebuild a village. Should have stayed at Evansville, huh? Can you imagine what our history would, you would never know, but can you imagine what our history might have been like if it hadn't been flooded? Really? Would we have 2 airports? Would we have 1 airport? Which would it be? We had a school. There's more. Right after that came Republic Aviation. You know, this is February 1. Republic Aviation was there 3 months after, they broke ground 3 months after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. And there's more. Modification Center came in at the same time. The Air Force gave these things to Evansville. The Republic Aviation people said as a gift for treating their pilots. These guys that flew in on this. And by the way, notice the Indian logo and the B-47 we call the Thunderbolt. Is there, do you know something I don't know? I see the Indian logo and I see the Thunderbolt. Yes.
Yeah, the Indian logo, though, is also the logo of Rickenbacker and his squadron in World War I, and it was very, very popular in the aviation magazine.
Is that right? Okay, thank you. So you see what might have happened. Yes, sir.
A couple of slides forward on the picture of the I don't know you one after it, the modification center. It said confidential on it. Was that the whole picture, or was there like a little part?
Everything, all of the shipyard, they made over 10,000 photos, and all confidential.
Oh, okay.
It was just typical, Yeah, this was, and of course after the war, this is a Willard photo. This is theirs, they have upstairs. But, was this a gift from the airport for treating those pilots? Treating these guys not? They flew in a storm. One of the airplanes broke its wheel, landing. And he had, the rest, they were going from Michigan to the Gulf. I forget exactly where. So the next day, 17 of them flew out. One had to get his wheel fixed, and he just flew back to Michigan. So here was something Evansville didn't get. Evansville did get. Now my dad, this is Republic Aviation. Let me tell you just a little bit about that. This is, my dad worked in this hangar right here, and this was the final inspection of pre-flight. My dad put water in the P-47. My dad put water in the P-47. Does that sound crazy? Yeah. They had to test it. The P-47 had water injection, and when the pilot needed power or what have you, Dad filled that water jug because it had to be whatever it was. So he inspected the tail assembly with his flashlight and his stamp and everything. I found his stamp. This is what, just a little aluminum stamp. And Dad had a stamp in there with M3 or something like that, and he would stamp it. Had an ink thing in one side and a stamp in the other. But this is where my dad worked, was right here. And that's probably the best place in Republic Aviation to work, because everything was going on. Yes, sir?
In fact, go back to that picture right there. Go back to the last one where your dad worked. That's St. George Road. You can go down that road today and see Whirlpool on one side and the airport on the other. But if you look closely over the fence, you can see old ramp that they use to taxi the aircraft to the airport, and it's grown up with grass and everything now.
There's a Come on, here you are. Here you are.
Yeah, right? Yeah, right in that area there.
I'll show you a better picture, looking straight down. It's Kent Wilson's picture. And I'll show you what all went on down here in 2 or 3 more slides. These guys that were working here, see, that's 4 bays. They're building those, they're hanging tarpaulins off the ends. People are working in there right now. Bird snakes, tarpaulins, all that's coming into those, and they had to fight the birds, you know, to build the airplane park. A lot of it was erecting the equipment, the machinery. I doubt if they were building anything, but the first B-47 was built right here, the Hoosier Spirit. They built it out in the hangar. I can't tell you the rest of the story because one little paragraph says that they built B-47s in vacant buildings and warehouses around the Evansville area. And that's it. They were building P-47s before there was a plant ready to build them. This hangar on this side, this part of it was a modification and correction hangar. These airplanes, well, I went to come up to the next picture and I'll show you about that as I go through. I want to tell you about the hangars. Right here was where I grew up. We moved down in 1942 and I have a trailer right here. And that's Mr. Field's hobby shop. Is right there right now. This family was the Charles Heinrich family. His brother was our landowner was Charles Heinrich. But I want to tell you right here, they have 2 sisters, Heinrich Spencer ladies that live right here. The airport family bought this. The ladies spent their summers in Evansville. Are you ready for this? In the winter, they went to Green Bay. Son, and 2 sisters. I thought you'd like this. Modification Center. This was confidential. Everything was back in those days. I chose to leave it on here in the shipyard photos. Oh, it tells you something. Look at all the activity. Look at all. This was not Republic Aviation ended up managing this, but it was not originally Republic Aviation. It was just Modification Center. The airport gave that to it, and it's number 6. Which implies there's 5 more somewhere else. Ken might know about that. This was what the Army did in 1943. They drained the airport. Finally, at long last, they made the airport worse than all mud. The black stuff, here's Modification Center number 6. Here's Republic Aviation, Highway 41. You see that? The hangars. See all of this work? This is for drainage. This is for drainage. All of those black things you see are for drainage. So that's what they improved the runways for the 3rd time, but the Army really made it the airport that we have in this part today. And by the way, I didn't show you back, the early airport ended right here. This was called Rucker Road. R-U-C-K-E-R. It's a farmer, and it was the name of the road that came from here, went out to the Oak Hill. So that was Rucker Road, and that's where the east-west runway is now located. This was the first hangar. This was my water. That thing's 65 feet tall, and I was 11 years. I just lived across the road. And Highway 41, I rode my bike to Airfields, believe it or not. You know, there was no danger back in the water days, but I had more trouble getting up here. I could get up this high. And that thing's 65 feet. And I'll try today, I'll try next week, I'll try the following, and I just couldn't. One day I was up about here, and man said, follow me, son. Something like that, so I followed him up, and I finally got in here. And, you know, it's kind of like, get out of here, kid, you know, because I was just a boy. Not really, but the worst place of all was coming around that corner right there at the pine top. You know, you could see forever behind you and in front of you and down, rolling down. So that was my water that was getting up there. This was Memorial Field in 1943. It was at Burkhardt Road and Slaughter Avenue, now the Lloyd Expressway. I think maybe Division Street or Slaughter Avenue is over here. Maybe that part of the road. Sam's Club says right here now. So now you know what Sam's Club is. This was built to take private aviation and give it a place to work because they weren't that well at the airport. There was one Eastern airline flight came in, I think, per day to the airport. So this was this is where Evansville College trained 254 pilots, Navy pilots, V5, V7 program. So that's what they use this field for. I love this picture. This is kids. It's looking straight down, and I'm going to walk in front of some. Here's St. George Road. Okay, St. George Road was blocked off from Republic Aviation. And you'll see, here's Highway 41, the terminal. Here's the other railroad. These airplanes, Dad's hangar was right here, where they prepared the plane for its first flight. The other hangar, the correction and modification hangar, was over here, and that's where they had to, the test pilots found problems, and they had to repair those, fix those, modify them, what have you. So, anyhow, Dad worked here. There is, looks like about 12, 24, maybe 30 airplanes. These guys over here, I think, are finished airplanes ready to fly away. The Army has bought those. The way they worked at it was the civilian test pilots or public aviation test pilots would fly the airplane when they came out to this hangar, and they would notify, note any problems. And then they would take it into this hangar and repair those problems. And I'm sure the first one, the first 100, the first 1,000 was a problem. But I bet they got pretty good towards the end when it was perfect. They come out perfect. But let me show you, look at this. There's a P-47 flying. He's on the test script. He's burning in the brakes. They would come out here, go to the compass rose, and then come over here and go off the test script and burn in the brakes. And I don't know what else they did. But they did that. Then he goes to the gun butt and fire at the end. And there may have been some other things they did as well. The flight engineer was not a pilot. He was a groundie. But I thought, my goodness, what a job. Yes?
Probably a lot of people know this, but for the ones who don't, the cemetery, Sunset, that, they used that as, they had a target on there, and that's what they would aim at, to see if the aiming on it was correct.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sunset Memorial, now, which is all, well, it begins right here. It's right here. If I come across, I forget what comes up next. Control tower picture. Ken says the anchor bolts to the tower are still here.
Really?
I'll check that out sometime. Is that inside the fence or out? It's inside? Okay. Okay, that's what I was remembering. Okay. Thank you, Ken. I think this was the biggest thing that ever happened on the airplane. And I kid you not. And I think this was because of the Normandy invasion. This happened, started building up in December, obviously, but in January and February, they had between 400 and 500 P-47s parked on the field. Where God's name did they put them? I have to have that answer. But remember, this was January, February. They sent in, it had to be a nightmare. And somehow or the other, I guess they realized we're going to need P-47s at Normandy. We're going to need to flying over. So they started working, and it took them 3 months to work it down. The only number I ever saw was 278, and they'd already flown some out for like a month. When I got up to February, they were down to 278. So this is only a guess. I suggest you there was 400 to 500 P-47s on the airplane. You don't have that much room. So that's why I show this picture. This is to show you the math. There's 20 of them. Picture that 20, and for 400 there would be 20 times this number. For 500 there would be 25 times that count right there. How do they keep track of them? They're all numbered and everything, but did they keep them in order? There's no report. This is secret stuff, remember? The newspaper barely reported that. They had 3 little 2x2 articles on this whole thing. Otherwise, we'd never know about it. And I never got into the airport laws. I think probably the public aviation laws would be better. And I think all of those laws are in Montgomery, Alabama, at either Maxwell Air Force Base or Gunther Air Force Base. I was given clearance to go down there. But it was like, mister, you go in and find what you're looking for, good luck, chum. So, you know, I can picture going in a warehouse thing, bigger than a hangar, and trying to find microfilms. That's what I'd be looking for, is reels and microfilms. Yes, sir.
I wonder if the backlog is as much as you get the transportation pilots to transport them to go on. Because remember, they had to off from Evansville to the coast, then down to probably Brazil, and then over across the Atlantic.
Here's the rest of the story then. This picture was made by guys that came in to fly. What they were doing to get rid of it, they pressed everybody in the service they could get, flying service. The ferry pilots were women. As far as I know, they were all women. So they were flying day and night, day and night, day and night. These guys came in to fly 2 or 3 flights. When pilots would come in from Europe or Pacific or where have you, they would schedule them to Evansville, if they could. Of course, there's some that could. And then that pilot would fly that one P-47 would go from St. Louis or where have you. So that's how they finally got them down. It looks like it took at least 3 months to waste all of those airplanes, get them flown with either West Coast, East Coast, or Gulf Coast. And this is some of the, pardon? Yeah, all of the ferry, I shouldn't say all of the ferry pilots I'm aware of are all women. I'm sorry, I didn't show it. I wish I had. Because it's
Most of these pilots are out of the very
one of these guys from that. Thank you. These are out of Cincinnati. These pilots are out of Ferry Division of Cincinnati. This is my dad playing shuffleboard. Look at the background. Look at that, you know, that's everyday stuff. We're crazy to get P-47 here at Evansville. And let them work 50, 20, whatever you wanted, you could go out and get them. So this is shuffleboard. You see the tail back here, and that guy's playing this. The Thumper B-29 flew into Evansville and said, thanks to Hoosier Cardinal. They had this, but Hoosier Cardinal made such, see this dome? I think Hoosier Cardinal, they glued plastic 3 or 4 domes that are in maybe this dome's part right there. That Sunset Memorial Park is in the background you were talking about. And this flew in just to say thanks to Hoosier Cardinal, and they had a special thing with the shuttle place and come out and look there.
This is prelude.
Thank you, Ken. Yeah, Republic at the end of the war was building these things, the cowlings and the flags. There was a statement about that in 1957, there was still Republic aviation machinery in the building. It was still there. And that was what, 12 years after the war was over. And let me tell you, I didn't mean to get to this, but this is so revealing. Evansville got back into building warplane parts, cowlings, wings, tails. Surville did quite a bit. Hoosier Cardinal did some. But in a little one sentence in an Evansville Courier article was this statement. And I can't quite quote it, but I can get close. Republic Aviation, again, asked to buy International Harvester to return to Evansville. Can you imagine? That was their death row. When they closed that plant, and Dad, he was there that morning and he was gone that afternoon. When they closed that plant out of the airport, that was their death knell. Republic Aviation struggled and struggled and struggled. They built some good stuff, but if they'd have been here, the Republic Aviation was just like Toyota, just in time. Republic Aviation was building at the end of the war 10 airplanes per day. There was 10 engines. There was 10 tails. There was 20 wheels. There wasn't a warehouse full of them. Toyota does that today, and so many other places do just in time. When Toyota's building 5 cars an hour, they don't want 6 parts there. They want 5. And that was what Republic Aviation, I don't know if they invented that, but they were pretty clever people. And I suggest if they had stayed in Evansville, we might still have Republic Aviation this day. Building who knows what. God knows, you know, it's not possible to say. This, anybody know what this is? You know what that the Whitewater Region Airline at one time. But it's Tri-State Airline right now. Yeah. So this was, see where they got all those stuff? And they built this there and closed the one that was down by Highway 41, became the state, it's now state troopers, I think, the sheriff's office. Here's a great story. This is fantastic. And the pictures are so bad, and I apologize. This was the first jet to ever come to Evansville. And it was also the second jet to come to Evansville. The P-80, the Shooting Star, he flew it in on November the 13th to nickname it Christmas Miss Evansville. Here was the deal. The Air Force was running a contest, a flight contest of speed. And they had 5 identical P-80s and 5 test pilots to fly. And what they did, it took 5 days, one P-80, I won't say P-47, one P-80 flew on Monday, one on Tuesday. They left at 10 o'clock from Cleveland Airport. From Cleveland, they made a circuit. They went over a pylon, and I don't know what the pylons were, at Indianapolis. And then they came and flew a pylon to Evansville. From Evansville, they went to Cincinnati. From Cincinnati, they went to Columbus and then back to Cleveland. And it was the elapsed time. They had it was 820 miles. They flew at 35,000 feet. I don't guess you could hear them probably at 35,000 feet. But anyhow, Miss Evansville came in third. One of the pilots, and they had to make their own strategy. I like this part. One of the pilot's strategy was at Cleveland to go down so fast and land, he collapsed his wing tanks. They just sucked them in because they're not made to take that shock of going shoots. I guess he don't. I don't know what he did, but anyhow, one of them won, and they were all pretty close together. So this was Miss Evansville. This woman was Winona Thurman of Midwest Air, secretary there. And this is the pilot's name. And here was the contrast in the picture is just terrible. So I can't get you a better one. That was the Evansville Press. The Scripps Hire newspaper sponsored this with the Air Force. And the Air Force, of course, put all the money in the pilots and all that. So this was the first jet ever landed in Evansville. I remember the day. We didn't go over there. Dad and I didn't go over the first time it was here because it was in the middle of the day. But we did go over there, I think it was Sunday morning. And it was like a spaceship. You touch that thing. Button, the sound. You know, this thing was nothing like the F-7s or what we run today, but it was awful. I never heard anything quite like that. That's what you would imagine it was beefy. But my God, what a thrill that was to actually touch that airplane. This is Skyline Airport in 1947, and they got your airplanes on the west side, and if I remember right now, there's the hangars and such are down there on the east side.
They're on both sides.
This photo was without a date. I just had to say something about it. Here was the third airport terminal was in 1950. What year forward is that? That's right. I've been trying to think. The first project was in 1960 in Richmond, as it says, 7. I'm going to tell you about this story because this is a newspaper story, and I think this is the heaviest lift, if you could call it that term, whatever it is. The Tennessee Air National Guard flew in 8 of these C-97s to the Evansville Airport. And they loaded off the local National Guardsmen to go to Puerto Rico. It was Vietnam trading was really what it was. So 8 of them came in, and they loaded 550 guardsmen with their gear, and I don't know if they had trucks or what have you. Some of these, I think, had a ramp in the back, but I don't know if these had. And they flew to Puerto Rico on August the 8th, and they came back on August the 24th. There's no pictures. There's only a little bitty tiny thing in the Evansville Press, a little bitty tiny thing in the Courier. Do you know why? They came at 2 o'clock in the morning. There was nobody out. And I should have heard these things because I was still living out there at the airport at that time. But, it's the middle of the night. If it didn't wake you up, you didn't know about it. So this was, I think, history, probably the heaviest lift I understand that the Air Force One, which I'll show you in a minute, was the heaviest airplane. But this was, you know, these guys were massive. And they flew in and flew out, flew in and flew out in the dark. And I have a friend that went on one of those. He flew out the airport. These were all local guys, Ben Sims and, Jasper, Evansville, as far as where the National Guardsmen came from. This was a failed airplane.
That plane later on was modified and became the refueler for the Air Force, and they called it the KC-97.
Is that right? They had those, didn't they? Yeah. This was quite an airplane, and it was big and heavy. N-51-071. Joe Stratton sent me this, and I put it in my book. It's part of my book, along with 3 slides. This is all I'm going to show you about the Aces crash. This was a failed airplane that the Aces got. That tail number, I'm showing 4 pictures in the book. One has lifting the tail. You can see that number. This was in Indianapolis. I didn't feel right about using that photo without permission, so I Googled Werner Fishdick. Werner, I guess, with a V. Werner Fishdick. I found his email address as Germany. And I said, what are your terms and conditions to use this picture? And several days later, he said, I can use it as you wish. He said, just give a donation to something worthwhile. So, look where, can you read where he lives? Who is a German? Somebody
Right here.
Read that. That's his town. But I love the guy, you know, and this was the Indianapolis Airport, which is where it was based. So that's the Aces fatal crash, and that's all I'm going to show you about that. This was a terminal, the 4th one in 1987. Highway 57 was relocated. The airport was named Evansville Regional Airport. I'm Dean. You remember this? This is my granddaughter's picture. Peggy Robertson is my granddaughter. She's in North High School, and they let the kids out. There may be 10,000 folks. Snap, 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 snap. All the kids out there taking that shot. That's fantastic. Rich is not in here, is he? Rich didn't come. I got this one to tell you about. Yes?
I remember that day whenever Air Force One flew over. I just got home from school. Mom was like, get out there, Air Force One's about to
Where'd you live?
right off the river. Kansas Road. Kansas and Green.
Rich Lidhoff took this picture. I'm going to give him I was hoping he could be here. This is Air Force One. It landed, it was coming in over North High School, it landed, and everybody's gone. And I was asking him to tell us, I'm going to tell you a couple of things on here that see these trucks, see all of these vehicles, there's shields. There's shields to protect the president from being shot on sight. Now right over here is where Mr. Spears' place is, and where I grew up. See all the police cars? Look at all the police cars. No humans, no humans. There's 3 humans right here. Do you know what they are? Snipers. This is the airport crash truck, and they stayed up there all day while the president was here. And they're snipers.
They missed, huh?
The airport people, yes, ma'am.
My nephew works at Atlas Fan Lines, and the stories he tells that
My
day.
fault.
And because they all went up on the roof and watched it, and Secret Service came in and made them all go down.
What?
Yeah.
Atlas Fan Lines is a mile down the road. Made them go in.
They broke in and
That's hard to believe.
we're all up there, and all of a sudden you see these men in suits coming up with the little earphones. They knew they were in trouble. They wouldn't let them go up.
I'm going to show you the rest of Rich's pictures. Rich was he waited for clearance to take off. He was way down the terminal, and it only took like an hour. I was surprised because they kind of planned it around the airplane. There's nobody here. See, everything is going. Here's the trucks. President's got one for the park dolls. Everything perfection. Okay? So Rich's airplane took off, and here he is going south. And he snapped this picture. Wait. There's more. Look at that. Now, they're way right to the right, and Rich took a picture to the north. How lucky can I be? How lucky can I have to have? This is my closing pictures in the book, is this airplane. Look at here, see, you can see the trucks lined up, and look how these guys are staggered. There was allegedly 2 snipers on these roofs, which I can't find. Snipers there, see that? That's the radar. 3 days before, my daughter took this picture. This was an Air Force 3, it was a C-17 that flew in, and you see it discharging the carpet. This is 3 days before it came back. Now, it came back with cars. So here it was 3 days earlier, with all the stuff unloading, the radar and what have you. And it's parked somewhere down here. It came back an hour before the president with 3 cars, 2 identical appearing SUVs and an emergency fire ambulance food thing. So they're all gone to, where'd they go? They went up the other side of Toyota. And that was a deal. You remember the reason the president flew in was to go north on the airport. And the airport, this is all closed, there's no traffic here. And it was closed from St. George Road, I think, all the way up to the other side of the Toyota factory. It was a nightmare for the people. So, when the presidents fly, it causes all that stuff. And I heard a picture of Tri-State Aero and the hangars. That's quite a place. Quite a place. That's my show. I'm done with it unless you want to see. Yes. Who was the president? Obama. Who was the president?
Escort or fighter bomber or what was the main use?
The B-51?
No, B-47. The main use of it.
I think it's fighter airplanes. I think it's Richmond, but it became pretty good at rockets and bombs. They used the heck out of them.
Well, they had too many bombs in there.
Fighter escort.
Fighter escort.